The moment that I introduced or told my sons that this lady was going to be moving in with me, things just started spiraling down. It was about 3 or 4 months where things just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where they would say, if we're coming to your house this weekend, your girlfriend can't be there. The day that this lady moved in with me ended up being the last day that I saw them for 3 years. And the more that I tried to push to see them and to find a way to get to spend time with them, it just seemed to make it so much worse. I thought what I was doing was the right thing. So it was this rewiring of my brain, letting go of the past, letting go of that story, and just this preparing now for this next phase of meeting up with my sons. So it was just this letting go really of so much of the past.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition. Welcome back to the Life in Transition podcast. I am really excited today to have with us Garry Junkuhn, who is a father to 2 incredible sons, 20 and 23, and originally from South Africa, and now guides fathers to reunite with their children and to really build that connection. Garry, this is something very close to my heart, being a father of 3, 2 of them adopted, and been through all the challenges and love that is, and having great relationships with them today, which I'm really grateful for. So super excited to have you on the podcast, Garry. Most welcome.
Art, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. So what would you consider to be, Garry, one of your most transformational, most impactful transitions that you have been through in your life?
Definitely would be when I lost contact with my 2 sons for over 3 years. That took place 10 years ago. One of the hardest times in my life. It was this fire that ripped through my life. I could never imagine that something like that would actually take place. From the beautiful relationship that I had with my sons to then not having any contact with them. And it just set me off in a completely different direction within my life. So that, for sure, in a very quick summary, is one of the most extreme transitions that then led on to the work that I do now directly with fathers, preparing them to actually reunite with their children. So the good news on that are important to share is I've been reunited with my sons. It's been 7 years. They're 20 and 23, and just a beautiful relationship with them. I feel like I'm a better father, a better guide, a better mentor to them. It's changed the course of my life without a doubt.
Awesome. So you didn't have any contact with them at all for 3 years. Is that the right understanding?
That's correct, yes.
And so if that started 10 years ago, so they were 10 and 13. So right at a time, I mean, children always need their parents, right? But especially for boys coming into puberty, to be without their father is a very, very difficult time.
Yes.
So what led up to you being separate from them?
Yeah, it was this a range or a sequence of events that took place within my life. From I was married for 10 years, got divorced, and about 3 years afterwards, I had met a lady that was in my life for a fair amount of time. And I thought now was a good time to introduce my sons to this lady. And the introduction went well. Everything seemed really good for 6 months. We spent time together. We went on bike rides, just did a whole lot of things together. And everything I thought was going amazing. And I was extremely happy. And just to see my sons accepting this lady in my life was amazing. But the moment that I introduced or told my sons that this lady was going to be moving in with me, things just started spiraling down. And I realized that I didn't quite understand what they were going through. I didn't understand what meaning this would have for them, the fears that they had. And just I had no preparation for navigating something like this. And this is something so many parents go through post-divorce. New relationships where there's children involved. There's not a lot. I just didn't have that understanding. And it was about 3 or 4 months where things just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where they would say, if we're coming to your house this weekend, your girlfriend can't be there. And I was like, how is that going to work? And I would have these arguments with my ex-wife, and she was, my frustration was, well, if this progresses further to if I were to get married to her, would she move out on the weekends when my sons came around to see me? And that just didn't make sense to me. So I kind of dug in, my sons dug in, and it just got worse and worse to the point that the last day, the day that this lady moved in with me, ended up being the last day that I saw them for 3 years. And the more that I tried to push to see them and to find a way to get to spend time with them, it just seemed to make it so much worse and worse and worse. And my life started spiraling down. It just got worse and worse because I couldn't focus on my business. My diet just went out the window. Everything just spiraled down. So it was an extremely difficult period within my life.
So both parties, both halves of this relationship, if you will, dug into being right instead of being in relationship.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Which unfortunately happens a lot, right? I always sort of joke about you can be right or you can have a relationship. Which one do you want? And that's true in business. It's true in personal relationships as well. Yes. Wow. So when did you, like, what turned the page? How did you come out of that?
A few steps that led to the transition out of that.
Yeah.
One, it was a year up to not seeing my sons. Well, there was a step before that. Let me share about that step, because this is an important one for your listeners. 7 months into not seeing my sons, I had met up with my mentor, and I shared with him, my sons are supposed to be coming around this weekend, but they are so angry with me and the decisions that I've made on this and everything that's unfolded. I don't know what to do. I just can't believe that they don't see me. And my mentor said to me, Garry, what is the gift in this situation? And I'm like, what do you mean, what is the gift? How on earth can this be a gift? And then I realized, what am I going to do with my time when I don't see my sons? Am I going to continue in this downward spiral, or am I going to turn this around?
Right.
Because if I continued in this direction a year or two, there would be nothing left of me. And so that is where I started really working out. Diet improved vastly, reading so many more books, got into meditation, connecting with friends, getting into nature, and things just started going in this upward spiral more and more from there. And
so you took the time that your sons weren't there to invest in yourself, to do all the basics, the simple basics, but that not very many people do because they're not easy, even if they're simple, but to really take care of yourself and become healthy, to do your own work, let's say.
Yes. Yeah, normally in trauma or traumatic things that take place like that, people just regress, they introvert, and they don't take action on those things. It's a bit of a sabotaging that takes place, and I definitely was doing that to my own life. A year into not seeing my sons, I had pushed myself more and more with the things I was doing. And that day, I decided I was going to go and sleep the night in the forest alone in a waterproof sleeping bag, so no tent. Never done that before. Never gone into one of the forests and slept the night. And just before turning off my phone, I checked a message that was on my phone, and I received a message from my oldest son's school. And in the message, in the email, I saw that my son had changed his last name. And that was this knife that just stuck into me. And I realized this might not be another few weeks or months. This might be a decade or two before I get to actually see him. And it was this pivotal point. That was a second major pivotal point in my life there, when I realized if I continued going the direction I was, and I still hadn't recovered from what I had gone through of losing them, I ended up going through this massive reboot within my life where I sold and gave away everything that I had, no longer had a roof over my head, didn't have a car, didn't have anything like that. I was completely free falling. And I ended up going on this nomadic journey for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And in that journey, I ended up meeting so many mentors, so many incredible people that showed up in my life, put myself through so many extreme and difficult situations that strengthened me and prepared me for this moment to reunite with my sons.
Okay. So you did that nomadic journey for 6 years. You had already 1 year separated from them, but you only were 3 years separated from them total. So 2 years into your nomadic journey, if I'm doing the math right,
yes,
you must have reconnected with them. So take us through that. Like, what did you learn? What did you change in yourself to open up the space to reconnect with your sons?
Yes. So, great question. I'll share where I was, and I was living in South America in Colombia. My sons are living in England.
And had that been the family base for that whole time? Like even when you
there
guys split up was also
in England.
okay.
England was where I was
Okay.
living with them.
Okay.
So, what did I change inside of myself?
Yeah.
It was just this letting go of this narrative, this story, this feeling of frustration with what took place, the decisions that were made, my ex's part involvement in that, and the story in my mind of the restrictions she put in place. But I know what she was doing was to protect my sons. And I thought what I was doing was the right thing. So it was this rewiring of my brain, letting go of the past, letting go of that story, and just this preparing now for this next phase of meeting up with my sons. So it was just this letting go really of so much of the past.
Yeah, and I really want to drill into that for a second, because you said something that's really wise, and maybe our listeners already got it because they're pretty wise. But you said, I let go of the story. You didn't say I let go of the data, or I let go of the way that it was, or I just made peace with the way it was. You recognize that there is facts, but then there's data, but there's also story. And the story is your own embellishment, your own coloring of the facts. And it's not necessarily the way that it is. So I noticed that you use that word several times. I let go of the story of what I've been telling myself about the data, if you will. And that's really powerful. And that's why I asked the question too of, what did you change in yourself? Because change always starts in ourselves, right? And just to even recognize, when did you first recognize that it was, I'm going to say story, not data, to put it in those terms? That this was a story you've been telling yourself about the unjustness of the situation versus the actual data of the situation.
Yeah, I don't think that it was in a single moment.
Okay.
It was the progression that took place over time.
Okay. So those 2 years of being on journey, and I'm going to call it doing your soul work. I mean, you went on this, you went on this journey, all right? You went on the hero's journey, and you had to get let go of your stuff, and you did the descent. And then you started to learn about yourself and let go of your story, as well as all the physical stuff you'd let go of in your life. Am I putting too many words in your mouth here, Garry?
No, it is correct. I definitely found myself in the abyss, the belly of the whale. It was a journey. And I think through the difficult things that I went through, living in parts of South America and seeing the struggles other people went through, I think part of my perspective, I started gaining perspective in my own life and my own suffering that I was going through. And again, that story. And there was this slow shift and transition that took place. And I also can attribute part of this to a good friend that I was traveling with, that he would often hear me talking about my sons and the events that took place. And through those conversations, and, he didn't make things worse. There was just a lot of encouragement that was taking place there with him.
Mm-hmm. So he maybe helped you to parse out the story from the data, and the data from the story to a certain extent, right? To be a reflection for you and impartial, and not just, they're horrible, or your wife's horrible, your ex-wife's horrible, or whatever. But like, okay. And did you, like, where during that time did you recognize that if you were going to have a relationship with your sons again, that it was up to you? You know what I mean? Like, where did you recognize that this was something that you would have to do yourself, not keep blaming them or blaming your ex-wife?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it took place in a conversation with this friend where I was about to go to another country, because as part of visas in most countries, you can only stay there for 3 months each time.
Right.
So there's a lot of moving around to different countries. And in that conversation, he encouraged me to actually go and try and meet up with my ex-wife and have a conversation with her and see whether things could be mended to be able to, not with her, but to be able to be this transition, this bridge back to my son's lives.
Right.
Because they had both blocked me. I had no contact to them.
Wow.
So all communication would have to go through her. And I realized this was what I had to do, was walk into that gladiator arena, because the town where we're living, there were think about 55, 60 family members on her side that were living there. And in my mind was, I return and there's going to be these people waiting with pitchforks and to tar and feather me.
Right.
And it was not a fun experience that I was stepping into there, but I realized I had to do this. And the journey I'd gone through and the difficult things I'd put myself through prepared me for that moment.
And so how did that progress? How did that, so you've realized this is what you need to do. You also have a realization that you're capable of doing it because of the journey you had been on. And then you show up and
I met at a Starbucks with my ex-wife, and the first probably half an hour to 45 minutes was very tense.
mm-hmm.
It was just kind of a conversation with her, and really hadn't had any contact for those 3 years. And so in that first period, the entire time lasted about 3 hours that we ended up talking. And it went from very tense towards the end, where she started sharing some photos of my sons and hearing how my sons have been doing. And that was such a hard moment, but such a lovely moment to actually see my sons, and that changed so much. I mean, it's such a changing period of a child's life that they had gone through. And so I'd asked her, is it possible that I could meet up with my sons? And she said, okay, well, are you still living in the same place? And I said, no, I live in South America. She was like, what? She had no idea that I was living there. Wow. And so she said, okay, well, let me check to see if they want to see you. And I got an email, I think 2 or 3 days later, saying they're not ready to see you. And then 6 months later, I received a message from my older son saying, hi, Dad, I always wanted to become a professional motocross rider. And I see you doing pretty well for yourself, but I promise you I'll pay you back for the bike. And I don't know why, Dad, but I stay awake till 5 o'clock in the morning crying because I miss you so much. And that was the first moment, led to a phone call, led to me flying over, meeting up with both of my sons. And it's pretty profound because I'm flying there in 2 weeks' time to meet up with my sons again. They've come out here many times to live with us, and it's been an incredible journey. But yeah, thinking back 10 years ago, how all of this spiraled down to where it is right now, I'm just filled with so much gratitude.
Oh, that's beautiful. If you could go back and tell your younger self 10 years ago something with what you know now, the wisdom you've learned from this, from the whole process, but I think maybe primarily from the 6 years of soul work and wandering, what would you tell your 10-year younger self?
As long as my younger self wouldn't be able to listen to me, I would be okay. And why I say that, it was such a journey that I had to go through.
I get it.
I would have told myself, these are all the things you're going to be going through leading up to this point, it would have been pretty hard for me to be able to accept so much of it. But if I were to try and answer that and answer your question, it would be really just trusting in myself, trusting in what I was capable of, just to keep showing up, keep just taking those steps to becoming a better man and a better father. That it's keep looking for a way to just honoring my sons to be better.
Okay. Yeah. To take care of yourself as an exercise toward honoring your sons and preparing yourself for when you would reunite.
Yes.
And how has this transformation, and I'm going to make it a little bit broader. You talked about the transition when you lost your sons because that was the tipping point. But this whole journey that you've been on, how has that affected other relationships in your life? I mean, we've heard about your sons, you're very close with them now, but how has it affected other primary friends relationships, family relationships, relationship with yourself, relationship with a partner?
Yeah, great question. Definitely strengthened all of them. For sure, all of them. I definitely beat myself up for a very long time, and I was extremely hard with myself. So a lot of forgiveness, a lot of love that I learned to give myself. Even healed things with my ex-wife when we're traveling over, my girlfriend's going to be joining. It's not the same girlfriend.
Right.
That relationship ended up ending another year or so afterwards. But my girlfriend has been part of my life. She's an amazing lady for 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
She's joining me. She's has an amazing relationship with my sons. My sons, as I said, have come to live here. But she's coming over with me to meet up with my sons and also with my ex-wife. This would be the first time in person that my ex-wife is going to be meeting up with my girlfriend. So it's kind of a full circle a decade later,
Right.
bringing closure and healing to that. And yeah, this has just rippled into my own family, my brother, my sister, my mom, my father when he was still alive, and then definitely the work that I do now with fathers.
This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by MidLife Transition Mastery. If you have reached midlife and you are successful, you have checked all the boxes. You've done everything you thought you should do, and especially pleasing everybody else, doing what you think everyone else needs you to do. But you still feel like something's missing. Like you're coming up empty, feeling alone, feeling misguided or lost. MidLife Transition Mastery Explorer community is for you. Here we will build authentic community. We will learn about the 8 steps to mastering midlife transition. And we will learn and execute living life no regrets in our second half. Please check out the community on lifeintransition.online/MLTM, Midlife Transition Mastery. And I look forward to seeing you around the fire in this community. Right. So it's interesting. And I wanted to point out, you talked first about your relationship with yourself, which I think is absolutely right, because it's only out of that we can enter into relationship in the right way with others. Right. So it's I think it's interesting that came up first, and it makes sense. Right. Love your neighbor as yourself, but you can't love your neighbor well if you don't love yourself well first. Right.
Yeah, there's so many sayings around this. You can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to put the gas mask on yourself. And this is a bit of a broken narrative in society. Is many parents sacrifice themselves for their children, but then that becomes a very poor example for their children on how to actually live life and how to actually show up in relationships. And so that's been a huge change within my life, is that transition to realize, if I'm not healthy, if I'm not looked after, what influence am I going to be in those around me?
Yeah. What example are you giving to your kids? Because who you are is much louder than even what you do, which is much louder than what you say. Right. Yes. So if you're not, no, that's really true. If you're not taking care of yourself, what kind of example? I was at a Modern Elder Academy event in Mexico recently. And one of the things they talked about with children, adult children, empty nesting, growing up as the age that we're in now, was they said, hey, you had your adventure. Let your kids also have theirs. Right. So be an example, be someone they can come back to, but don't need them in a sense. Right. So that they have the freedom to be who they are. Right. That was one of the tipping points in my life, was when I had the heart-wrenching realization that my kids, the way I was holding my kids, like seeing my kids in my life, is that they were like accessories to my life. Like I was building this life and they were part of my life, not their own people.
Yes.
All right. And that was like, oh my God, it was horrible and wonderful, because it shifted in that moment. It shifted the relationship with all of my kids, where my concern quit being about how do they fit into my life? How does it look in my life, to how can I serve them in their life? All right. Yes. It's very different.
That's definitely something that went through my mind so often as I went through all these different experiences, the people that I met. Part of me was thinking, man, I can't wait for my sons to experience something like this. And I realized, no, they're on their own journey.
Right. There's something like this. It's going to be their own version of that. Right.
Correct. And then to your previous point, there is that we don't need our children need us. And need us to be a healthy version of ourselves.
Right.
And from that, we then, through the way we live our lives. Our children are watching us a magnitude more than what we're telling our children what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. Where do you think, Garry, your life would be now if you hadn't made this journey?
Well, my life had spiraled down so much in putting my life on pause that the company I was running, I was 2 small businesses I was running, imploded. Financially, I was completely devastated. I literally, it was a decision that I'd made that if I didn't do this hard reboot of removing the roof of my head, the car, and all the expenses that went with that, I wouldn't be able to continue paying maintenance and sending that to the mother of my children. And I had to find ways of extending that runway. And if I hadn't made that massive change within my life, which is one of the harder decisions that I had to make,
For sure.
was this reboot, I don't know if I'd be alive here still. If I continued going down that and just would have gotten to more and more debt and would have become more of a burden to those around me. And that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a burden on my parents or my brother or sister,
Right.
or anybody else around me. And so it was a hard decision, but looking back now, that free falling and trusting in life, and life just completely opened up the moment that I actually made that decision.
Wow.
Some phenomenal things took place.
Wow. So if you make it a little bit cheeky, your alimony saved you in a sense, right? Because it's what started you on this surrender path.
Yes. Yeah. And just honoring that, like I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be in a place where I wasn't sending that money.
Right.
And
right.
It was obviously very hard for my ex. I mean, there was a transition period there of uncertainty for her. She didn't quite know what was going on in my life.
Yeah. Obviously, if she had no idea you were in South America, right?
Well, even before that point, there was moments where I would just ignore any message she would send to me for a week.
Oh, wow.
Part of that was I was volunteering for a week. And in the transition of figuring out, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to navigate this next phase? And I realized part of this was by volunteering. And that, again, was some beautiful wisdom from my mentor at the time, is volunteer your time. When you're stuck at a point in your life, volunteer. And in that, there's answers that will come to you. And many answers came to me in that volunteering.
Yeah, that's great advice. There's things that light us up that we can simply raise our hand and say, I'll help with that. And it makes such an impact. I just returned from a wonderful, authentic conversation, 2-hour lunch with a guy I met at a charity breakfast that I went to support Franktown, a charity here locally for single mothers.
Yes.
And wonderful, wonderful time. And if that was the end of the story, that would be plenty good enough. But I think we're going to do a lot of business together also, not because of, but also, right? So no, that's a really great piece of advice. If you don't know what to do, go help, go serve, right? For all of those who are in 12-step like I am, that's, having had an awakening, practice these principles in all our affairs and take it to others that are still there, right? But in any way, in any sense, to volunteer is a great point. You lit up, Garry, when you talked about how it was amazing that I think the words you used were how life caught you and how it opened up once I'll use the word surrendered to it, once you let go. Mm-hmm. So I'm so curious about that, the way you lit up when you said that. What happened to make you realize that life could catch you, that it would take care of you, that it would open up to you?
Yes. So one of the small businesses that was still in a very early stage was a wellness networking organization where you would learn how to bake bread, paddle boarding, photography, whatever it is. Those would be the exercises, and that's how you would then connect with other people. So it was called Well and Connected all those years ago.
Yeah.
And because I was going through this transition, my good friend that I started that business with was in the lounge at the same time as my mentor, and asking this question, or trying to find an answer to this question: what do I do with this next phase of my life?
Right.
And do I go off somewhere and try and find a job, or do I just free fall and go design websites, do public speaking, do pay as you feel work, or go down the safer route. And in that transition, I decided I'm going to free fall. I'm going to see where life takes me. And my friend who was in a business partnership with, he had said to me, well, if you're not going to be here and you're going to go on this free fall, and my plan was go to work on a cruise ship towards New Zealand. Since you're not going to be here, maybe you could take over this work that he had available, which was an event called Ride Across Britain. It was a 900 plus mile race or ride across the whole of the UK. And it was a paid
I assume.
Bike ride, yeah. A bicycle ride. And it was paid work. And so in that lounge, he ended up connecting me to the race director. The race director said, hey, perfect. This is the date of the event. Are you available? I'm like, yes, it is. This is the pay. And that single bit of first pay for those 4 days of work extended for another month of runway of paying maintenance to the mother of my children, plus food and who knows whatever else. And then there was a further transition as I was giving away and selling all the final little things that I had. I was taking 10 bags of clothes to the Red Cross. And outside the Red Cross there, I got a phone call from the race director again saying, Garry, the guy who is going to be doing the final leg in Scotland is just pulled out. Is there any way you could do that? So I was doing the start of the race and the end of the race, and that ended up being another month of runway. And so instantly in the start of the free fall, I was immediately given this income to actually start my journey. And things just opened up and opened up and opened up from there. It was just incredible.
How did you have the courage to pick the free fall versus the safe route? Go get a job back in South Africa or US or wherever. How did you have the courage to do that? How did you know what to do in that situation?
I think I had two incredible friends, mentors in the room with me holding that space and knowing who I was. I'd known them for a few years and they knew what I was capable of. I didn't know what I was capable of at that point. So I think they, through this conversation, led me to the point of then making this decision. Okay. I'm not sure whether I had the courage. I can't even really explain it. It was also so many years ago, but
you at least had
Maybe it was a greater calling that I had.
Yeah, no, for sure. But you had the relationships, the wherewithal to at least ask people that you trusted. You had people in your life that you trusted and you opened yourself up to be influenced by that, which is not always the easy thing to do either. That also takes a certain amount of courage, right?
Yes.
So, no, that's really amazing. I want to hear one more story of how life had you. Like those are two good ones, but what else did you, in your, to steal the title from Michael Singer, your surrender experiment, what's another big one that jumps out at you, Garry?
Well, probably the next step from there is as soon as I'd finished that event in Scotland, and it was the last week that I had my car available before I had sold it. And so in driving back, I had a call from, it was actually somebody who I'd worked with a few years before that, and said, do you want to come up for an interview for some freelance project management work? And this was in London. And another week later, I was in London, and in the interview, the guy who was interviewing me had just resigned to head up this arts organization that was funded by the BBC and the Arts Council, from it being only 1 or 2 days of work, ended up being 2 years of freelance work, initially working in London, and then I was able to then travel and head to South America with this freelance work, and it came out of nowhere. This income came through, and it was just this incredible trusting moment.
Right. That took place. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to dig in a little bit on your experience on reuniting and then really building profound or deep connection with your sons. What did you do? What did you learn from what you did? What would you do now? What is the sort of the sage or the wise advice you would have for others that want to reunite with their children and really build a real authentic connection, not a fake nice relationship? Yes. What did you do? What did you see? What did you learn? How did you come to where you are now?
So many things there that are coming to my mind. It is, number one, that I had built this momentum in that time away from them, where instead of the conversations that I could have had with them of, this is my side of the story.
Right.
This is the reason why I wasn't able to see you, and how did mom this and mom that.
Right. So
none of that would have helped at all.
No, that's justification, which is never the right approach in relationships.
Correct. So I had lived enough life, I'd been humbled to my absolute core to then and be filled with so much gratitude that when I saw them, I was just so present with them. I just spent time with them. Never went into the past. All I did was just build a brick by brick, building this bridge between their life and my life. And so it was this being so present with them. It was also realizing when they were going through different challenges in their life, and they would then reach out to me more and more. And that's happened as the years have taken place. I've learned less to try and solve their problems instead of just holding space for them and kind of talking it through for them to try and find those answers, and never judge them in whatever they're going through. And just through stories of my own life and my own experiences, that I would share some advice to them without saying, this is what you need to do. And I'm not perfect in any shape or means. I'm still a father in progress here.
Sure.
But looking at the relationship that I have with my sons and how often they reach out to me, and the things that we're going to be doing together when we are in England, and the things they've done here when they've been out with me, I know that this path that I've taken here, and this path that life took me on, has been the right one. And I'm just filled with so much gratitude to be at this place now with my sons.
That's wonderful. I wondered, and you said it in the sentence together, you said that, I was completely humbled and now so filled with gratitude. Did those come in that order? Do they always have to come in that order? Like, I'm curious about your experience and reflection on that.
Good question. I think based on my own journey, I had to be humbled first because I was so stuck in the story. And I think this is the same thing that I've seen with many fathers that I guide now, is they get so stuck in the injustice of not being able to see their children. And it's often the fathers I work with now is where the other parent, the mom, I specifically guide fathers, it's the mom that is withholding the children, saying negative things to the children. And the father gets so stuck in that narrative and the justice of that they are not humbled in realizing what role do they need to play. That event has taken place in the past or is still taking place.
Right.
You can't control what your ex is doing. You can't control how your children are behaving. The only thing you have control over is yourself.
Right.
And so there is this humbling that has to take place, that it's not somebody else that needs to be fixed first. You need to change your own life and your own perspective on things. And then that changes then how you reach out to the mother of the kids, how you reach out and message your children. It's going to come across in every single messages, with every message you send, without a father even realizing it.
Right.
So yes, it starts off, I think, with being humbled first.
Yep.
And even by volunteering and helping others that are less fortunate than yourself, is a step towards humbling yourself and giving perspective in your life. And then through this journey of getting out into the world, doing all these things, there become so many people in your life, so many events take place in your life, that you weigh up all of those people in your life, if you were to almost add everything up compared to the event that's taken place, and eventually it becomes a greater amount of momentum than that event. And that's where gratitude just fills you, where you just, if there was a time machine and you had an option to be able to go back and change the past, you wouldn't hop in that time machine and change it. Because you then are changed because of all the events and being humbled.
Right. This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Transition Mastery Coaching. If you have made it to midlife and you're successful and you are going through transitions in your life, in your business, in your career, or in your organization, and you're looking to master those transitions, to make the most of them, to accelerate into the next phase of your organization or your life. If you're facing, challenges in your business, challenges in your relationship, challenges in your health, and you really want to transition those quickly, I'm here to guide you for that. And I look forward to working with you. You can sign up for either Pinnacle Transition Coaching or Summit. Please go to lifeintransition.online/MLTM and scroll to see the Summit and Pinnacle Coaching, or reach out to me directly on my email, art@artblanchford.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and helping you to accelerate your transitions to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the second half in your organization and in your life, so you can live your whole life with no regrets. No, that makes sense. And I think it's really true that I've never put those two together before, but I think it's really true. It's like, is it necessary to be humble to be grateful? Probably to some extent, maybe not completely, but if you are completely humbled, is it a lot easier to be grateful? I think absolutely. Right. And you can see your life freshly and appreciate what you have when you don't have something, or when you have things taken away from you, or when you have your ego knocked off.
If I could add on to that, if you are filled with animosity, filled with anger, filled with all of those negative emotions, where is there space for gratitude? There is no space in the vessel for that.
No, that's really true, and that makes complete sense. Absolutely. I think about too this thing about what can we do ourselves, right? And I don't remember who said this, if it was Viktor Frankl or somebody else, but this quote that, until I acknowledge that I am today where I am because of choices I made yesterday, I cannot choose otherwise. So of course stuff happens to us as well, but we also make choices. And even if it's true that it was like somebody else's fault, if we hold that space, we cannot choose otherwise. Because if we're still a victim to that, we are a victim to our current situation as well. So I think that was, very well said. What the point you made there, that you have to take a look at, what is it that I can control? What is it that I had to do? What did I do to contribute to this? And how can I affect the current situation? You talked a lot about building the bridge brick by brick and staying focused on the current, the present, and the future. Were there times, or do you expect there will be, if there haven't been, where you did go back and not justify, but talk about the past? What were the hurts that they experienced? What were the hurts that you experienced? And to give a chance for forgiveness that come out of that. Has that happened with your children yet or not?
Yeah, there's been two moments, and I can remember the one moment. I won't go into the specific details of them, but I could see in talking about a portion of the past, and this was must have been about 5 years into reuniting with my oldest son.
Right.
And there was just a moment where a sequence of conversation took place where it led to this feeling, I need to speak about and correct something about the past. And in correcting and sharing that little bit about the past, I could see his little boy inside being happy of what I was sharing, but also another side of him feeling defensive, feeling almost more hurt than what I was actually sharing. And it made a very clear reminder, there's no need to do this, Garry.
Yeah.
There's no need to go into the past. Just keep building those positive memories.
Well, and I'll say for sure, there's no need for justification or even explanation of my own point of view about something. No. I think there is space, and it is healthy and healing to talk about, when this happened, this is how I felt. It's not a justification. And especially maybe from the child side, to be able to say that, when this happened, this is how I felt. This is what I want going forward, right? To acknowledge that. And that's also something that nobody can argue with you, right? I cannot tell you, no, Garry, you didn't feel that way. So there's nothing to get defensive about. It's just, this is how I felt. And then that gives space to let stuff, to let you to be known a little bit more on both sides of the relationship.
And there have been moments and times to have those conversations with my sons, and those moments have taken place when both of my sons have been guests inside of my community on a live group call with fathers, where
Oh,
fathers have
wow.
been able to ask them questions about what actually took place and how they felt.
Oh,
But very interestingly, and I don't know if this is part of our ability of humans to be able to recover from a very painful event, they couldn't remember so many of the situations that took place.
sure.
That was just something they had let go or just was no longer part of them. But deep down, I think they're still there. But I feel those things have been healed through these positive experiences.
Nice.
And also that I'm no longer fighting with their mom. And I think
Yeah.
that's been a huge healer in all of this.
Yeah. I say this from time to time too, but the best, I don't know if it's the best, but it's a quote, but it's pretty close. The best thing a father can do for his kids is love their mother. Right. And just to show
Love the
that
mother
example.
and get to an amicable place.
Yeah.
So you know,
Yeah, if you need to, right?
Yes.
But still, whether it's a romantic love or a platonic love, to love
Yes.
their mother, right? That they feel safe and grounded. And then you're also giving them an example, right? And anything else is also giving them an example, right? Every part of everybody's life is either an inspiration or a warning.
Yes. Yeah.
But
and it's in this time, it's been very important that I've never spoken negatively
absolutely
to my sons about their mom.
Yeah.
There's been opportunities,
of course,
and frustrations,
yeah.
But I realize that's one of the key things I share with fathers is never say anything negative about their mother. There's no good that ever comes out of that. So,
yeah. Yes. And if you want to take that a little longer, never talk down about anybody that's absent.
Correct.
Right. You have a problem with somebody, have the courageous, have the courage to have the courageous conversation with them in an honoring and integrity way. No, that's really.
It was Stephen Covey that said that.
Yeah. Yeah. But he also, as he admits in his own books, and I knew Stephen Covey, everything he got was from somewhere else. Right. Like even his, habit one is from Viktor Frankl. Right. So anyway, what piece of advice, like if there's one thing that anybody can do that's, especially if it's somebody that's estranged from I'll just make it a little bit broad. If somebody's estranged from somebody that they love or separated from somebody that they love, what's one tool that you would give them to start that they can do now? They hit the pause button on Spotify here or Apple Podcast and they could take action. What would that one action be?
Whew. I think it's very relevant to parts of this conversation of what you've been speaking about, and that's Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, is download that audiobook, listen to that audiobook, and in that is incredible perspective that you will gain on your life when you hear the struggles of others, and especially the story of what took place to Viktor Frankl. Mm-hmm. That's a book that I've listened to over and over again. It's a bit of a rudder when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed or like that life isn't quite working out how I expect it to be. And I listen to that and it's like, Garry, really, you're not on a concentration camp. Not everybody around you has been gassed.
Right.
You're not wearing a dead man's shoes,
yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Like there's perspective here. You're still like are alive. You've got your life ahead of you. What are you going to do with your life?
Right.
And there's always a way forward. And so download the Audible version of that, go for a walk. And I think that's a very practical thing for anybody going through any difficult
time. No, that's a great point. And it is a great book. And when I've read the paper version of 2 or 3 times. I've listened to, I gave it to my kids upon graduation from high school, along with 4 or 5 other books because I'm a book guy. But even paid them to write book reports on them about how they're going to use them in their life because I thought it's worth it to get them in the habit of reading and to reflect and think about how they can apply it. So no, that's great advice. And I think spending time with wisdom literature of any kind on a daily basis is incredibly powerful. But I loved, and I never really thought about that book so much from that perspective, but just about reminding us what we have to be grateful for, right? And that it's not what we want from life; it's what life expects of us, right? It's his main message of existentialism, right? Yeah. So that's
if you can find a why, you can overcome almost anything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, that's beautiful, Garry. I really appreciate your transparency. I want to congratulate you on doing a business that's really meaningful and helping others, and having your kids involved with it as well after what you guys have been through. That's really beautiful and wonderful. And your energy is infectious, and the trust that you have in life, the faith that you have in life, is also really a really beautiful thing. So thank you so much for sharing openly with us today.
Oh, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.